there's also with you Shimei, the son of Gera, Benjaminite from Bahurim. He cursed me with a terrible curse on the day when I went down to Mahanaim. But when he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I'm not going to put you to death with the sword. Therefore, you don't hold him guiltless. You're a wise man. You'll know what you ought to do. And this is what you ought to do. You have to bring down his gray head with blood to the underworld. And then he dies. At the end of his life, I finally get a picture about what goes on in David's heart. And this is the way David lives his life. Good Deuteronomic theology is you do good, you get good. You do bad, you get bad. According to David, you do good to me, you get good. You do bad to me, you get bad. Even when I promise that nothing bad is going to happen, you will get bad. It's very mafia-like. Sort of makes me yearn for that Goliath story and that little anointing story. He's a very troubling man. But anyway, he's dead now. So then David slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. The time that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron, 33 years in Jerusalem. And so Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his kingdom was firmly established. 2 Samuel 7. I will raise up one of your sons after you, who will sit on your throne, and that throne, his reign, will last forever. That throne is going to be established forever. And as soon as he gets on the throne, he starts getting rid of all the rivals. Adonijah, who tried to make that boy, who came to him for mercy, kills. And then finally at the end of chapter 2, we're told, so the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon. Now it's established. It was established before, but now it's established because he doesn't have any rivals. Chapter 3, let's see about Solomon. Let's see what kind of person he is. I already get a clue at the end of chapter 2, but we'll see what kind of person he is. Solomon made a marriage alliance, oh my Lord. It doesn't even, we don't even start off. We don't even start the monarchy. And it's already against Deuteronomic law of the king. He made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh. With Pharaoh of all people, king of Egypt. He took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were sacrificing on the high places. However, because no house had yet been built for the name of the Lord, right? Again, when you come into the land, you find the place that you worship, blah, 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 like that one place. Now they're worshiping every place under Solomon's reign. So Solomon loved the Lord. I get an insight there. Walking in the statutes of his father David. Not the statutes of Moses, the statutes of his father David. There goes a stone right in the pond. However, he was also sacrificing and offering incense on high places. The king used to go to Gibeon to sacrifice there because that was the principal high place, and someone used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. Oh my God, that's just wonderful. Bigly sacrifices. So, lots of sacrifices. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. It's a troubling little introduction to this famous story. Because what I want it to say, what I wish it would say, is the Lord appeared to Solomon. But it says that the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. I had a dream last night. My grandfather appeared to me in a dream by night. Did my grandfather actually appear to me? No, he's dead. He's long gone. several years ago. So I wonder if it's a dream or if it's actually, if it's a dream or if it's the Lord. I'm not sure. Well, we'll see. I'm sure it'll become clear sooner or later. So the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said in the dream, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You've shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness and righteousness." I guess we don't speak ill of the dead, right? It is a funny thing, and that is immediately after the death of David, for the rest of Kings, every time David is mentioned, it's always in glowing terms. It's always in glowing terms. When the narrator himself has just told you all the rotten things that has happened, but it's always in glowing terms. It's almost as if we, after David's death, we step out of the looking glass and we just start saying it, what everybody else is hearing. Faithfulness and righteousness and uprightness of heart toward you, and you've kept for him this great and steadfast love, and you've given him a son, that's me, to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you've made your servant king in place of my father David, although I'm just a little child, right? I don't know how to go out or how to come in. I don't know anything about all of this. Your servant is in the midst of the people whom you've chosen, a great people, so numerous that they can't be numbered or counted. So give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, and able to discern between good and evil. That sounds really familiar. There's somebody else, maybe a nice inclusio, maybe at the very beginning of our semester, who wanted to be able to distinguish between good and evil. You remember? Oh yeah, the woman, right? The way in which she does that is that she takes and she eats and she gives and her eyes are open, and not good things come from that. It's a funny thing about being able to distinguish between good and evil and wanting to be able to do that. I'm not saying it's not a good thing, I'm not saying it's not a bad thing, I'm just saying that the last time that happened, things didn't wind up so well. Able to distinguish between good and evil, because who can govern your great people? And it pleased the Lord in the dream that Solomon had asked this, and God said to him, "Because you have asked for this, you haven't asked for yourself long life, or riches, or the life of your enemies. Instead, you've asked for yourself understanding and discerning what's right. I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and a discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you." And then he gets a kick in the pants. "Because I also give you what you haven't asked. I give you riches, I give you honor all your life. Everybody's going to be pleased with you, everybody's going to respect you, nobody's ever going to contradict you, nobody's ever going to stand up to you. Riches and honor all your life. No other king is going to compare with you." And Oscar Wilde once said, the only thing worse than not getting what you want is getting it. There is no such thing as a free lunch whenever, and I don't care, it doesn't talk about this, I'm just talking about life. Whenever God blesses you with something, it is always a test. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Whenever God blesses you with a good family, whenever God blesses you with wealth, whenever God blesses you with renown, whenever God blesses you with a good mind, whenever God blesses you with an open heart, whenever God blesses you with anything good, it is always, always a test to see what you're going to do with that. God gives him an understanding mind. But then also, I can tell you, spoiler alert, also gives him the tools by which he is undone. Riches and honor all in his life. "If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I'll lengthen your life." 15, and then Solomon awoke it had been a dream. If God actually appears to someone, it doesn't say that. It makes very clear after this whole thing that the whole thing had been a dream. So did God actually appear to him or not? I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out. We'll see how wise he is. Solomon awoke. It had been a dream. He came to Jerusalem, where he stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. He offered up burnt offerings and offerings of well-being, and provided a feast for all of his servants, which I'm sure they loved. They thought he was great. Solomon is great. He's wonderful. Later, 2 women who were prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. Interesting scene, I'm sure. This is very Agatha Christie-like. One woman said, "Please, my lord, this woman and I lived in the same house. I gave birth while she was in the house, and then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, the woman also gave birth," which happens quite often in houses of prostitution. I don't know if you've ever, never mind. These things happen quite often in the ancient world, right? So I gave birth, and then she gave birth 3 days later, and we were together, and there was no one else with us in the house. Only the 2 of us were in the house. Notice how she keeps harping on that. Then this woman's son died in the night because she lay on top of him. And she got up in the middle of the night and she took my son from beside me while your servant was sleeping. And she laid him at her breast, and then she laid her dead son at my breast. And when I rose in the morning to nurse my son, I saw that he was dead. But when I looked at him carefully in the morning, clearly it wasn't my son, the son that I had born. But the other woman said, "No, the living son is mine and the dead son is yours." And the first one said, "No, the dead son is yours, the living son is mine." And they argued between the king. It's kind of interesting, isn't it, how the woman knows, that's telling the story, knows exactly what happened in the night when she was asleep. Someone who's wise, like Miss Marple, might be able to see the story and know that when you're asleep, you don't know what's going on. Yes, maybe the dead son is beside you and maybe it's not your son, but you don't. I'm sure that's what Solomon's gonna point out, I'm sure. Then the king said, "The one says, 'This is my son that is alive, and your son is dead,' while the other says, 'Not so, your son is dead, and my son is the living one.'" He has a real grasp on the situation. That's good. Good, Solomon. Again, it's just, for me at least, it's not a necessary thing. Verse 23 doesn't need to be there. And so I just wonder why it's there when he's stating what's absolutely obvious to anyone that's actually read the previous 7 verses. And then the king said, and so the king said, "Bring me a sword." And they brought a sword before the king, and the king said, "Well, this is easy. Split him in 2 and give one to the one and one to the other." That's smart. That solves the problem, right? That's stupid. That doesn't solve anything. It doesn't get into the situation. There's no investigation. There's no questioning. There's no wondering why she knows about all this stuff when she says there's no probing. It's law and order, and in the first minute there's an execution. It's no, you need to have just cut the kid in 2 and divide it. But the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because compassion for her son burned within her, "Please, my lord, give her the living boy, don't kill him." And the other said, "Yeah, sure, you're so smart, wise, why don't we just kill him, right? Cut him in half." And the king responded, "Give the first woman the living boy. Don't kill him, she's the mother." See, the problem is, I don't know if he knew that before. The story is told, and I don't know how wise he is. In fact, I come to the end of this story, and I don't know what I need to think about Solomon. I know the way in which the story, again, don't get me wrong, I know the way in which the story is interpreted. I know that. But when I actually take a look at the story, there's a perfectly good way for you to tell the story that comes out at the end about showing how smart he is. And it's not told that way. And again, I have nothing against Solomon. I'm not trying to cast aspersions on him. Please be aware of that. From the very beginning, all these characters, I'm not trying to cast whatever. I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're... I'm just trying to understand why the text is written the way it's written. Why do you tell a story this way when it's so ambiguous? I come to the end, and I don't know what I should think about Solomon, but there is a character in the book, in the story, that I actually admire. And it's the mother. The mother who's willing to give her own son to save his life from a king who wants to kill him. So all Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to execute justice. There's a perfect good way to say that the king was very wise. And you don't put it into a third person talking about what they think. Well, of course they're not going to criticize him. Of course they're going to think that he's awesome. Of course they're going to think that he's wonderful. Because God is going to give him riches and honor all his life. No one will ever criticize him. Except the narrator. Which at the end of the day is the one person you don't want to criticize you. Because it's the only way we know anything about Solomon. Starting in chapter 4, we start talking about what he's like, about how wonderful his reign is. In 4:20, for example, Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand of the sea, which is exactly the promise given to Abraham. If you remember, your descendants are going to be like the sand of the sea. They ate and they drank and they were happy. Well, of course, because whenever people have food and drink, then things are great. Whenever they don't, then people get upset. Solomon was sovereign over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines, even the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and they served Solomon all the days of his life because he's so wonderful. Solomon's provision for one day was 60 cores of choice flour and 60 cores of meal. How much is a core? I don't know. It probably says in the notes, but I assume it's quite a bit. 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fat fowl. Oh my God, this is just wonderful. I mean, obviously, whenever someone is over a kingdom that's this abundant, clearly they're doing a good job. Right? Because of course if you get good, you must be doing good. It doesn't work that way. He had dominion over all the region of the west, from the Euphrates to Tiphsah to Gaza, and over all the kings west of the Euphrates. He had peace on all sides. During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel lived in safety, from Dan even to Beersheba, all of them under their vines and under their fig trees. Everybody's just happy, happy, happy. And also, Solomon had about 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots. He also has 12,000 horsemen. It's a funny thing, isn't it, the way the narrator does it, and that is he puts wonderful things and really not so wonderful things right next to one another, so that the contrast is, you can't miss it. These officials supplied provisions for King Solomon and for all who came to sing King Solomon's table, each one in his month. They let nothing be lacking, and they also brought to the required place barley and straw for the horses and swift steeds, each according to his charge. Beginning of 29, God gives Solomon very great wisdom, discernment, breadth of understanding as vast as the sand on the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt.